Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another Shropshire church. This is the Church of St Mary, Sutton Maddock. Like nearby Kemberton, it was rebuilt in the 1880s. But in this case, the tower was retained, and the tower is very interesting. It's 16th century, not a lot of them around. The cause of the rebuilding was undoubtedly partially bad stone, but also changes in fashion, that the old building was seen as a bit small and not very attractive, and they wanted a bigger, grander building in a more 14th century style, and that's what they've got. The church has had a long connection with Kemberton. We noticed in Kemberton that there's a memorial there to a previous incumbent who had shared the two parishes. Sutton Maddock is a very small parish. There's a few houses. I say small parish, it's probably actually a big parish, but it's an agricultural parish with not many houses. And therefore, just as Kemberton's a little village, Sutton Maddock just outside. Sutton Maddock had a vicarage, and as we noted in Kemberton, there were times when the vicar of Sutton Maddock might also serve as the curate at Kemberton, while the actual rector of Kemberton was off doing something else, somewhere else. So we'll have a look around this building. As I say, it's mostly Victorian, some interesting features, and then we'll have a look around the outside. Not as fascinating as Kemberton, but Kemberton is rather special. So let's have a look around. So as usual, we start in the tower. Well, as usual, we start at the west end. In this case, it is in the tower. We have here a couple of old chests. This isn't a typical old church chest, you can tell, because it's only got one lock, but still it's quite useful. Some old memorials. This is William Jones, late of Harrington in this parish, who died April the 6th, 1823. And then you've got memorials of children as Walter Mansell, who died in 1795 after an enterprising and active life, whereas his wife, Margaret Mansell, was long-lived. She dies aged 67. She'd been married before. Equally distinguished through life by a faithful and zealous discharge of all the moral, social and religious duties, and at the approach of death by Christian fortitude and pious resignation. And we have here, this is a picture of the church before rebuilding. You can see here you've got, yes, it's been rebuilt, well, the nave has been rebuilt in the 18th century by the look of it. So as with Kemberton, you've got an 18th century rebuild that is followed by a 19th century one. And then here, Elizabeth, wife of William Farmer, Gent, and sole surviving daughter and heiress of Joseph Yates, Gent, of the parish of Donnington in the county of Salop, a descendant of Francis Yates of that parish, who was distinguished for his faithful adherence to King Charles II and for the important services he rendered to that unfortunate monarch during his sojourn at Boscombe. Boscombe, of course, is the Royal Oak. It's when Charles is hidden away. And then you have William Farmer, died at Ancaster, province of Ontario, Canada, March the 7th, 1886. So moves to Canada. Yes, Boscombe, the Royal Oak. The family there were Roman Catholics, and so they had places to hide people because they were hiding priests. Of course, Charles II became a Roman Catholic when he died. And literally it was on his deathbed, but he promised to do that before. Here we have the font was once here, because we've got here the very typical Anglican window, the baptism of Christ, which is baptism, and Christ receiving little children, which is not baptism. But there we go. I shall leave it at that. It's just the facts. And the font is now at the front, which, even though it interrupts some of the symbolism, is an awful lot easier on the necks of the congregation. And here we have the war memorial. This tablet was erected by the parishioners of Sutton Maddock to the honour of the officers, non-commissioned officers, and men who gave their lives and served their country in the Great War. And then we've got 5 killed, and you notice various members of the Farmer family. That's the same family as the architect. I suspect he may have had something to do with the rebuilding here as well. There's the pulpit, wooden this time on a stone base. and you've got again this brass work on the screen. Here, of course, you've got this quite notable chancel step, and obviously the brass screen is a bit higher to make sure people don't trip over it. There's the font, which is Victorian. Organ here is by J.W. Walker of London, and it's an 1880s instrument, so it's roughly contemporary with the rebuilding of the church. We've got here, just something I probably mentioned before in one of these videos, what's known as the English altar. Some of the Anglo-Catholics, the High Church people in the 19th century, discover that medieval altars would often have, well, again, technical term here, they're called riddle posts, and the riddle posts surround, as you can see, the altar, and they have hangings from them. The idea is that they prevent the priest, because of course it's a medieval Catholic situation, they prevent the priest from standing behind the altar. He has to stand with his back to the people. And the idea is, of course, that he is then lifting up, elevating the elements at the Mass. And these posts, you can see, usually the front two will have angels on the top. Sometimes, quite often, all four do. In this case, all four also have candles on. The angels can range from this sort of thing to, well, there's a church in, down in, I think it's either Gloucestershire or Oxfordshire, that has some rather interesting 1920s type angels. But this is more typical that these angels are robed and they've got elevated wings, and it's called the English altar because they imagine, they think this is specific English. It's not actually. It was quite a common thing in the Middle Ages to have altars like this, but they're brought back by some of the Anglo-Catholics, and they really love them, and that's what we've got here. The altar table itself is modern, as you can see, probably 20th century in fact. Above we have a actually very nice east window. You can see here you've got these crucifixion in the centre, and then you've got the Nativity, the baptism of Christ, and then crucifixion in the middle, and then you've got the resurrection and the ascension. And that's one of those angels. Here we have John the Baptist and the Virgin Mary. You've got there this credence shelf, which again lends, if you'll pardon the pun, credence to the idea that this also is by Mr. Farmer of Kemberton, because it's very similar to that at Kemberton, and so indeed is the piscina. Yes, this is the same architect. I hadn't been able to find that information before, but everything here says this is the same architect. Very nice open roof there. Again, a very common idea in these Victorian buildings. You can see they were quite elevated here in terms of the chancel and that nice shiny brass work. So it's not as exciting as Kemberton, but it is a nice building, and this is by J.W. Walker and Sons, London, 1889, and it's given, there's a plaque here saying it's presented by Mrs. Orme Foster of Apley Park. That's the local big house, dedicated April the 30th, 1889. Not much stained glass, just this and that, but then of course the same is true at Kemberton, just down the road, and I suspect Kemberton again is a Apley Park. Unfortunately, they've covered up much of the floor with carpet, which is a shame because you've got a lot of these tiles, and the tiles probably in the sanctuary will be similar to those at Kemberton, which are by the, I didn't mention the Kemberton video, but the tiles by the local tile works over at, well, in the Ironbridge area. So that, and that's a nice pulpit, so that is very much the inside here. You can see, by the way, just go back to here, you can just see the contrast between the old material and the new. So we'll go outside and have a look around. Oh, that's the other thing you notice, that the window is off-centre. There is a reason for that. It's called the stair turret, and obviously the stair turret needs to be in town. The stair turret is on the side where there's more material. So let's go outside and have a look round. So we're now outside at Sutton Maddock, and you can see again this contrast between this 16th century tower and this Victorian nave. But as we saw from the old picture inside, there was a contrast before, because the rest had been rebuilt in the 18th century anyway. There has been a church here, of course, for a good long time. It's an established vicarage, but as with Kemberton, the local stone is basically rubbish, and so it has to be rebuilt several times. I don't know how many times this has been rebuilt. Maybe as often as Kemberton, hopefully not. But here at least they built the tower out of decent material, and I suspect that the 18th century, or the 19th century rebuild is just, we don't like 18th century churches anymore. So we'll have a look around the outside and again see some of the detail here. So here we go, nice deep Victorian porch there. Again, the style is 14th century, although they say it's 1880s, and contrast that with that tower, which is very 16th century. I mean, that square topped window would have been, well, interesting, but again, styles change, tastes change, and it's also a very important thing that Victorian era you get this sort of idea that there is one style for churches, and it's really 14th century. But really, it all depends on the period and on what the taste is at the time. Just trying to do this without. And there, you just see those windows, little windows, those little square windows in the corner. That, of course, the stair turret, which here is internal. The trade-off with internal stair turrets is that you have less room inside the tower, and of course you end up with an off-centre window. But very, very, very pretty. Very nice. Obviously the window's been restored several times. And you see the weathering on the sandstone. It's a nice coloured stone, but it's not, well, but sandstone's like that on the whole. And sandstones range from relatively solid to some extremely soft stones that basically need replacing every couple of centuries, at least on the facing stone. Here again you're looking at Cosford stone for the Victorian work, and you can see a nice big vestry, and that's the old vicarage. If you look at old clergy houses, they're generally fairly big, certainly Anglican ones, and even some nonconformist ones, and it's because, of course, among other things, you had large families with servants. But Anglicans also had to be able to put up the bishop if he came visiting, and certainly the archdeacons if they came visiting. So there we are, nice tower up there, nice bit of 16th century work, and you can see here there's the tower, there's the vestry window, and underneath that's the heating plant in the basement. That's a very common place to put it, obviously, because it means that you haven't got this thing sticking out somewhere, and if you've got the heating going on under there, then hopefully you get some knock-on effect heating up the vestry. And then here we've got the two access doors. There's the steps up to the vestry for the vicar, and there's the steps down to the heating plant for the people shoveling coal, because it would be coal around here, because it's the area on there, the old vicarage there, it's now private houses, they tend to be. It's a nice big, and here we are William Farmer, farmers, big local people, and of course the pun is still works because they were, yes, farmers, because it's an agricultural area. Lichgate, relatively modern, as they are in many cases, and it's a traditional type of gate, but because they're made of wood, quite often they don't last very long. And that is all the way around Sutton Maddock, St Mary's. So there we have it, St Mary's, Sutton Maddock. Like nearby Kemberton, the church is open basically daily, and if you're ever in this area, in the Iron Bridge, Telford, Shifnal, Bridgnorth area, there's all these little churches scattered up in this region, and most of them are open, and they're very much worth a visit. And of course, great part of our heritage. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.